Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Bible in Life podcast. The goal of the Bible in Life podcast is to provide what like to call blue jeans theology. And by that, I mean theology in the language of everyday life that's rooted in the context of everyday life, so that we can follow Jesus more fully, more completely right in the midst of our everyday life. And in that vein, over the last handful of weeks, my friend Stephen and I have been exploring this idea of rewards in heaven. And so Stephen's back. We're going to do one last episode on this topic of rewards. So, Stephen, welcome back to the Bible and Life podcast.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me back again.
Yep. And I think this has been a helpful conversation just to kind of think through this whole issue of rewards and being motivated by rewards. And that's really where the topic began. I think in the first episode, we just really raised the topic like, uh, aren't we just supposed to be good for goodness sake? And what we really see in the New Testament is, well, no, God actually promised rewards to us. And so rewards kind of were his idea. And we shouldn't feel bad about being, looking forward to some sort of reward in the world to come, right? So we talked about that. We talked about the idea of the nature of those rewards a little bit, that there's arbitrary rewards and inherent rewards, and how what it seems to be in the Bible is that the reward fits like the person and fits their character and fits what they've been through. And so some of the things that they're promised seem to fit with their situation and what they've endured through in life. So we talked about that. In our last episode, we really wrestled uh, with the idea of, are there degrees of reward? And obviously, I don't think we totally answered that question. There seems to be some ambiguity in scripture on that. There's difference of opinions among Bible teachers on that, and but we at least wrestled with that and looked at what does that mean, and um, what might those rewards be if there are degrees of rewards? What are we talking about? And again, it has to do with really having faithful character where Jesus can trust you with the things that are important to him. So we've explored some of those things. Anything else that stands out to you that maybe we explored on the last few episodes?
Well, I think one thing that's come up probably in every episode is that we've tried to make it really clear that all the reward conversation is separate from the salvation conversation, and that it's not we're trying to steer clear of the works-based salvation. And while works may have something to do with our rewards, that's separate from salvation. So I think that's worth highlighting again. And then also there's I think we touched on like our motives need to be in the right spot. Our heart needs to be in the right spot.
Mm-hmm.
Um if we were to only be doing these things and then demanding a reward, we would surely be in the in the wrong there. But I think
Like an entitled toddler who
what
throws a
sets
tantrum
my
if he
heart
doesn't
at
get his
ease about
lunch.
it is that it's not my idea, it's God's idea, that
Yeah.
God is a rewarder.
Mm-hmm.
And then that makes
Yeah.
it feel okay
Yeah.
and even a good thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, good. And that was a really good emphasis on the idea of, yeah, however rewards play out, it's still in this context of grace and salvation by grace and eternal life as a gift. So yeah, that was good to reemphasize that. And so to wrap up that conversation about rewards, um, I think it would be worthwhile just to explore the question, so what? Like, why does it even matter? Why does this conversation about rewards matter? Why does the Bible promise rewards? Like, so what? Um, and one observation that stands out to me is that a number of the passages that have to do with rewards also have to do with perseverance or endurance and faithfulness to Jesus. And that seems to be a pretty big theme as to why these rewards matter, right? Like God promises rewards because he wants us to faithfully endure.
Hmm.
Um, we've already mentioned a few passages out of the Sermon on the Mount, particularly out of the Beatitudes and earlier episodes. Let me just read towards the end of the list of Beatitudes. Jesus pronounces a blessing on those who are persecuted. Like they're treated harshly for their faith. And this is what he says: "Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." There's there's a benefit to them. They've been faithful through persecution, and theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Or he goes on there and says in verse 11 of Matthew chapter 5, "Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and say all kinds of evil against you falsely on account of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." So Jesus appeals to getting a great reward as a motivation for enduring hostility and persecution for your faith.
Yep.
And that seems significant. Like, oh, we should pay attention to rewards in the Bible, because if we ignore them, in some regard, Jesus seems to suggest that it may demotivate our endurance.
Yeah. Which makes perfect sense to me as a, especially as a runner. I think that idea of, the carrot on the end of the stick is really a good motivator sometimes. And especially when you're in the thick of it and are, you've lost all touch with why you even do this anymore.
Um, yeah, you're a distance runner, right?
Yeah, that might be a strong word, but yeah.
Well, you run multiple miles at a time. True.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's more than a lot of us do. All right. So, and in the middle of running multiple miles, there's moments where it's like, it gets pretty overwhelming when you're thinking, I have gone this far and I have this much further to go.
Right.
How does the promise of some sort of reward motivate you in that moment?
No, I think it takes you to the future when you're done and feel good about what you've done, what you've put into it to get there, and all those things. And so if it's in a race, then I mean, I'm never winning races, so that's
So the
if
reward
you're
isn't winning, but
no, my reward's not winning, but um, being done with the work and getting some kind of, it's cool to get even a t-shirt or, any kind of a reward for completion is great.
it's satisfying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've talked through this whole topic of degrees of reward, the kinds of reward that fit what we've been through and who we've become and what we've dealt with, right? And when we read a passage like Matthew chapter 5, verses 10 through 12, where Jesus says, "Look, rejoice and be glad for enduring those hardships and persecutions for your faith, because your reward is great in heaven." It's really that same idea that he's appealing to.
Yep.
Keep in mind that there's going to be a great reward. So endure, be faithful, don't quit, right? Even when it seems hard, even when it seems unfair or unjust, your father hasn't ignored you. He sees you, and he's going to reward you for hanging in there and being faithful in that moment. I think that's why rewards matter, is that idea. And we see that in plenty of other places in the New Testament as well. Paul's own testimony at the very end of his life. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 6 through 8. 2 Timothy is the last letter we have from the Apostle Paul. In fact, I just wrote an overview of 2 Timothy for renew.org that'll be being published by them here in the next week or so. It's Paul's last letter that we have. It's his second Roman imprisonment. Life is hard for Paul at this moment, right? His first Roman prison, he was in house arrest. Now he's in more of a dungeon-like situation. He's already had his initial hearing. It didn't go well. some of his colleagues in ministry are embarrassed by him, and so they have left to other places. Some he's sent out. He's largely by himself. It's not a pleasant situation. And Paul does not expect a good outcome when he gets to the actual trial for his case. He's expecting it to go bad. And this is what he writes. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 6-8. He says, "For I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time of my departure has come." He's expecting that death is what awaits him, that that's going to be the outcome of his trial. The time of my departure has come. And he says, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I finished the course. I've made it all the way through that 10K or that half marathon or whatever it is, right? That's what he's talking about. I've finished the course. I've
Yep.
kept the faith. I've battled through it, and I've got to the finish line. And in the future, there's reserved for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not to me only, but to all who have loved his appearing. To everyone who have loved his appearing, been faithful, made it to the finish line, they're going to get the crown of righteousness, whatever that all entails, and however that reward plays out. They're going to get a victor's crown. We talked about this in a previous episode, the difference between a royal crown and a victor's crown. This is a victor's
Yep.
crown. It's like you're getting the gold medal hung around your neck because you reached the finish line and you've been faithful to Jesus. So again, the reward is a motivation for perseverance and endurance. I think that's why they matter.
Well, you're teaching a Romans class right now, right?
Yes, I am.
Um, it's somewhere in Romans, right, where there's a verse about suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance produces
Yeah.
character, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
How do you?
character leads back to hope. That's Romans
That's
chapter
right.
5.
You think that plays into this in some regard? Because there's a lot. I mean, the idea of suffering and perseverance, um, producing character, like that all kind of fits that running the race
Yeah.
analogy as well.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I think that's why in that sequence in Romans 5, it culminates with hope. That starts with hope, but it also ends with hope because we now know there's a certain sense in when you've been tested and you've been through it, you know you can make it. You know you can do it, right? There's no way I could feel like I could make a 10K right now. I mean, I ran a few of those 40 years ago, but I have no confidence. You have confidence. If someone said, go run a 10K, you could easily do it.
Yeah,
You have the character of a runner enough to do that. I currently do not have the character of a runner enough to do
right.
that. Right. And so your endurance leads to proven character, and proven character leads back to hope. And then Paul says there in Romans 5, and hope doesn't disappoint because the love of God has been poured out in our hearts through the Spirit that He's given to us. So it culminates in hope because we're still looking forward. We're looking forward to what's to come and to the reward of glory and heaven and all that's entailed in some of these rewards. And so uh, the hope becomes a key motivator for the endurance, which leads to the character, which deepens our hope, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we could keep reading lots of other passages. I mean, Paul talks about 1 Corinthians 9, running the race that we've talked about. When you run a literal race, you compete in the literal Olympics or whatever, you get a perishable prize. In their day, it was literally, he says, a perishable wreath. It was literally like the victor's crown was actually made out of leaves, celery leaves, laurel leaves, and all this. You put it on your head. You know, in a few months, that's dry, dead, and now powder, and that's what you get,
Yeah,
right? But we do this. We run this race. We're faithful to Jesus for an imperishable victor's crown. It's never going to go away. So our victory will last forever. And so we have a very clear objective, and Paul even says there in 1 Corinthians 9, that's part of the reason why he strictly disciplines his body as a faithful follower of Jesus, because he wants that victor's crown. He wants the reward that comes when you make it to the finish line. So all of that says to me that this conversation that we're having and that we've been having over the last few weeks it's really important. I think we started this series of podcasts with you raising the question, why don't we talk or preach much about rewards in heaven and rewards in glory? And I think we are doing not only ourselves, but all the saints a disservice by not talking about that. How do you have motivation to be faithful when you don't have any sense of the good reward that you're going to get? You have maybe some vague, fuzzy sense, but no clear sense, no, you know, nothing that motivates you to say, "I want that victor's crown. I want to be there. I want that crown of righteousness." Right?
Yeah. That's what I love about, multiple sections where Paul talks about that. He's got like a crystal clear vision for what he's doing and why. And it's just, I think that would go such a long ways in helping people persevere if
Yeah,
they really felt like they can get their hands on the prize,
yeah.
I
No,
think it's
the classic missionary story. Jim Elliot and the other four missionaries who were all martyred by the Huaorani Indians. In
yes.
1956, right? Long before that moment ever happened, Jim Elliot had written in his journals as a young Bible student and young pastor. He wrote the famous line in his journals: "He is no fool who gives up what he cannot keep to gain what he'll never lose." Right? Paul has that same picture. Jim Elliot has that same picture. It's like it's not foolish to endure hardship. It's not foolish to move to the jungles of the Amazon jungles of Ecuador. It's not foolish to lose your life trying to reach an unreached tribe in Ecuador as a 27, 28-year-old young man. It's not
Mhm.
foolish if you know you're going to get something that you can never, ever lose. And he lived that fully, Jim Elliot did, as well as the others with him.
Yep.
And
Yeah, it's a good point.
yeah, so having that sense of there's a reward waiting for us. Maybe we don't know exactly how all the details are going to play out, but there is a great, glorious, good reward, way better than anything we can imagine. Having that picture, believing that, filling our heart and our mind with that, meditating on passages like that is intended to drive us to faithfulness, to disciplining our body and putting off vice and putting on virtue and being faithful in the face of uh, opposition to the faith and all that, making it to the finish line.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a big, if in times of temptation or trials or, lots of different things to kind of out there to steer us off course, uh, and these rewards seem to be highlighted in multiple passages to be the thing that is your anchor
Yeah,
to get, Jesus is the big reward, of course. Um, but it seems to me like there might be, more, even better.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Obviously, he's the centerpiece of our reward, right?
Yep.
Now we walk by faith. Someday we'll walk by sight. We'll see the Lord.
Yep.
We'll see Him whom we have waited for faithfully for a long time, right? We'll see Him, and that'll be good. So He's a key part of our reward. But there's other things promised as well that seem to go along with that. However that all plays out.
Yep.
Let me end then this series of podcasts and this whole discussion with a passage that we haven't, I don't think, read in this series, but it's a passage that's meant a lot to me. It's meant a lot to a lot of people. It's out of Second Corinthians chapter 4, and it's verses 16 through 18, right at the end of Second Corinthians chapter 4. And I think it's a fitting culmination to what we've talked about on this episode and really to this whole series. It says this, again, Paul writing, he says, "So then we don't lose heart. We don't grow discouraged and we don't give up. We don't quit. We don't lose heart. Though our outer person is wasting away, our inner person is being renewed day by day. For this momentary light affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory that's far beyond anything that could compare to it. As we look not to the things which are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are temporary, but the things that are unseen are eternal. And I think that's such an appropriate way to end. I think it'd be worth memorizing that passage of scripture and meditating on it, soaking it in, that there's an eternal weight of glory that's yet to be revealed. That those who don't lose heart and make it to the end, they're going to get this eternal weight of glory. They're going to enjoy that, whatever that eternal weight of glory is, and the rewards that go with it. That's what awaits us. And whenever I think about that, and particularly this text, I cannot help but think of, it's my rough paraphrase, but this little line from Mother Teresa, who said in a nutshell that when we experience that eternal weight of glory, when we expect that experience, that the victory crown and the crown of righteousness and all that God has prepared for his people, it'll put the troubles and the struggles and the hardships of this world into perspective, so much so that whatever we've endured in this life will seem like one bad night in a cheap hotel compared to the glory that's coming to us. I think that's a good picture for us to think about.
I don't think I've ever heard that. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it paints a good picture for us. So,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Great. Well, I have appreciated all the conversation, John. It's been a good
Yeah.
topic, and I've learned a lot. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. It's been a good conversation. I hope it's really been helpful, not only to you, but to all the rest of you who have been listening in on this conversation, thinking it through with us. So thanks for joining us on this series and this episode of the Bible and Life podcast. Again, pray that it's been helpful to you and your faith and faithfulness to Jesus. So thanks for being a part of the Bible and Life family, and thanks for tuning in regularly. If you have been blessed or impacted by the Bible and Life, could I encourage you to do two things? One, share it with your friends and family. Let other people know about the Bible and Life podcast. Two, if your podcast app where you listen to it allows you to rate and review podcasts, could you do that? Leave a rating and a review of the podcast in some sort of digital way. That helps people learn about and discover the podcast a little bit more. So that would be great if you could do that. So thanks a ton for being with us on this episode, and we look forward to talking with you again next week.